I grew up in the generation of telling kids just say no to drugs. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out why people would use drugs, and if they did, why they wouldn't just stop. Then I realized the truth, the reality is a lot more complicated, and the reason that we're in the drug poisoning crisis we're in today has a long history. Join us.
The drug poisoning crisis is worsening year over year in Peterborough. Opium, the naturally occurring opioid, has been used as a drug for hundreds of years. Manufactured or synthetic opioids are a newer addition to the scene. In the mid-1990s, OxyContin, a synthetic opioid, was approved for use in Canada. It was heavily marketed by its manufacturer, Purdue Pharma, as an incredible pain medication with minimal negative effects. We know now that this was a deliberately glorified and inaccurate description. Instead, Canadians were being prescribed strong, highly addictive medications, and a new wave of fatalities from opioids began. With this wave of overuse and deaths, physicians were told to stop prescribing opioids. Although it was well-intended, this unfortunately backfired for those who are already dependent on opioids. Being cut off by their physician, coupled with a cost of living and mental health crisis, can drive a person to self-medicate, and the only supply that they can turn to is the unregulated market. Right as people were being cut off from their prescription supply in the early 2010s, conflict in the Middle East and North Africa decreased the amount of heroin that was being trafficked to North America. But instead of less access to drugs, the gaps in the market were then filled by potent synthetic opioids like fentanyl and carfentanil, which were being manufactured in and imported from East Asia. Unfortunately, these new age drugs were stronger than most people had ever experienced, and the street drug supply rapidly became toxic. Fentanyl alone is 50 times stronger than heroin, putting even those who'd consistently used heroin at risk. And then carfentanil emerged, a new version that's another 100 times stronger than fentanyl. At the same time, purity and consistency of the street drug supply began to decrease.
Any tablet, any powder, any form of drug on the street can have multiple other contaminants in it. Those contaminants can make the likelihood of an overdose higher and can have other negative health effects.
Other substances like benzodiazepines, nitazines, and xylazine began entering the drug supply. Some of these had even been manufactured for veterinary purposes and never been tested on humans, let alone proven to be safe. And it isn't just opioids that are being impacted. Fentanyl and these other substances are also finding their way into kinds of drugs that have never had opioids in them, things like stimulants, cocaine, and other party drugs. While generations of the past may have been able to experiment and have fun with substances, today's supply is simply too much like a game of roulette.
The crisis that we're seeing today has its roots in people that grew up 10, 20, 30 years ago. We will not solve this crisis today with any intervention, and we need a long-term approach and strategy that combines a range of solutions, including prevention, including harm reduction, including better access to treatment. Until we have that continuum, we won't start to reverse the trajectory on the crisis that we're seeing.
You probably know people in your own family who use substances, even if it's cigarettes or alcohol, who don't want to stop using or might not be ready. For those individuals, if we don't have ways of making sure that their street supply of drug is not going to kill them today, they won't be alive to get help tomorrow.